The morning Henry Thompson hit post on his coming out video, the world he had carefully built for 15 years collapsed in a single heartbeat. He sat in his small apartment in Columbus, Ohio, staring at the screen as the first comments rolled in, each one sharper than the last. Disgrace to the uniform. You betrayed every brother who died beside you. Real men don't do this. His chest tightened, but he refused to delete it. At 35, after 2 tours in Afghanistan and a chest full of medals he no longer felt worthy of wearing, Henry was done living a lie. The doorbell rang just after noon, pulling him from the spiral of hate. He opened the door expecting a delivery, or maybe his sister trying to talk sense into him. Instead, Alexander Hayes stood on the porch, suitcase at his feet, eyes the same stormy gray Henry remembered from desert nights 8 years ago. "Henry," Alexander said quietly, voice steady but laced with something deeper. "I saw the video. I got on the first flight I could." Henry's hand froze on the doorknob. The man who had once held him in the dark, whispered promises against his skin, then vanished without a word, was now standing in broad daylight like the past had never ended. "What the hell are you doing here, Alex?" Henry's voice cracked despite his effort to sound cold. Alexander didn't flinch. "Finishing what we started. Whether you want me to or not." Henry stepped aside, letting him in, but the air between them already felt thick with every unsaid thing. He closed the door and leaned against it, heart hammering the way it had the first time they kissed behind a supply tent in Kandahar. Back then, don't ask, don't tell was still policy, and fear had been their constant companion. Alexander had been a medic, quick with a smile and quicker with a bandage. Henry, fresh from his first deployment, had fallen hard and fast. They stole moments whenever they could, hands brushing in the mess hall, quiet confessions under starless skies. Then Alexander's contract ended after a roadside blast left him with a limp he still favored on rainy days. He left without explanation, and Henry buried the hurt under orders and promotions. Now the same man was in his living room, sunlight cutting across his sharp jawline, looking every bit as devastating as the day he walked away. "You disappeared," Henry said, crossing his arms. "One letter saying you needed space, then nothing. I thought you were ashamed of us." Alexander set his bag down and met Henry's gaze without blinking. "I was protecting you. If command had found out, they would have ended your career before it began. I took the hit so you could finish what you loved." Henry laughed bitterly. "And now? I just blew up my own life on social media. Family's already calling." My dad hung up on me mid-sentence. Mom cried so hard I could hear her through the phone. The guys from the VFW group chat are calling me every name in the book. Alexander stepped closer, close enough that Henry could smell the faint cologne he still wore, the same one from all those years ago. "I know. I read the comments before I boarded. But I also read yours. You said you were tired of hiding. That sounds like the Henry the first fell in love with." The word love hit Henry like incoming fire. He turned away, walking to the kitchen to grab 2 beers he didn't really want. His hands shook as he twisted the caps. Outside, the Ohio autumn leaves were turning gold, bright and defiant against the gray sky. Inside, every wall he had built felt ready to crack. Alexander followed, taking the bottle Henry offered. "I'm not here to complicate things more. I'm here because when I saw you finally say it out loud, I realized I never stopped waiting for you to be ready. And maybe I wasn't either." Henry took a long swallow, the cold liquid doing nothing to ease the burn in his throat. He thought of his father, a retired sergeant who still hung the American flag every Memorial Day, who had raised him on stories of honor and duty. The same man who now refused to answer his calls. He thought of his mother, who had already started dropping hints about the neighbor's daughter being single. And his sister, caught between loyalty and confusion. The backlash wasn't just online. It was already seeping into every corner of the life he had fought to come home to. "You don't know what you're walking into," Henry said finally. "This town isn't exactly progressive. The veterans group I used to lead? They're planning a meeting tomorrow to discuss whether I should be stripped of my post." "Stripped? Like I'm some kind of traitor." Alexander set his beard down untouched. "Then we face it together. Or you tell me to leave right now, and I'll catch the next flight back to California. Your call, Henry. But I'm not running this time." The silence stretched, heavy with 8 years of what-ifs. Henry looked at the man across from him, really looked, seeing the faint scar above Alexander's eyebrow from that same blast that had sent him home. He saw the same steady hands that had once steadied him through panic attacks after missions. And for the first time since posting the video, the crushing weight on his chest eased just a fraction. "Stay," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "But don't expect this to be easy." Alexander's smile was small, but it reached his eyes. "Easy was never our style." As the afternoon light shifted across the floor, Henry felt the first crack in the armor he had worn since basic training. He didn't know if Alexander's return would save him or break him further, but for the first time in weeks, he wasn't facing the fallout alone. Outside, a car horn blared, reminding him the world was still turning, still judging. Inside, two men who had once hidden everything now stood in the same room, the air charged with possibility and fear. Henry's phone buzzed again, another message from his sister begging him to come to dinner tomorrow. He silenced it. Whatever came next, it would start here, with the one person who had always seen the real him, even when he couldn't see himself. Henry woke the next morning to the smell of coffee and the sound of Alexander moving quietly in the kitchen. For a moment he lay still, staring at the ceiling, wondering if yesterday had been a dream. But the suitcase by the couch and the faint sound of humming told him otherwise. He pulled on a hoodie and patted out, finding Alexander pouring 2 mugs, sunlight streaming through the blinds, and catching the silver strands just starting to appear at his temples. "Morning," Alexander said, sliding a mug across the counter. "Figured you might need this before the family dinner tonight." Henry took it, the warmth seeping into his palms. "You remembered." "I remember everything," Alexander replied softly, leaning against the counter. They drank in silence for a minute, the easy rhythm from their army days returning as if no time had passed. But the peace didn't last. Henry's phone lit up with a text from his best friend, Mike, the guy who had served beside him in the same platoon. "We need to talk before the VFW meeting. This is messing with a lot of heads, man." Henry showed Alexander the message. "Mike knew about us back then. Never said a word, but he knew. Now he's acting like I dropped a bomb." Alexander's jaw tightened. People change when the truth gets loud. They spent the morning walking the neighborhood, leaves crunching under their boots. Henry pointed out the house where he grew up, the park where he played Little League, every landmark tied to the straight-laced image his family still expected. Alexander listened, asking gentle questions that pulled more memories out than Henry had shared in years. By the time they returned, Henry felt raw but lighter. "Tell me about California," he said as they sat on the couch. Alexander shrugged. "Opened a physical therapy clinic for vets. Helps with the limp on bad days. Dated a few guys, but none of them were you." The admission hung between them. Henry reached over, hesitating before threading their fingers together. The touch sent a spark through him he hadn't felt in years. "I tried to forget you," he admitted. "Threw myself into work, dated women to keep up appearances. None of it worked." Alexander squeezed his hand. "We both paid for the silence." The afternoon slipped away in quiet conversation and shared stories. Henry showed Alexander the medals in their case, the citation for valor that now felt hollow. Alexander traced the ribbon with a fingertip. "You earned these for bravery on the battlefield. This coming out? That's bravery too." As evening approached, the dread returned. Henry's sister, Emily, had texted the address for dinner at their parents' house. "They want answers," she wrote. "Dad's been quiet all day." Alexander offered to stay behind, but Henry shook his head. "If you're here, you're part of this." They drove in Henry's truck, the radio low, Alexander's hand resting on Henry's thigh for the last few miles. The family home looked the same, American flag waving from the porch, pumpkins on the steps. Henry's stomach twisted as they walked up. His mother opened the door, eyes red-rimmed. "Henry," she whispered, pulling him into a hug that felt both warm and fragile. Then she saw Alexander. "And you are?" "Alexander Hayes, ma'am. Old friend from the service." The lie tasted bitter, but Henry didn't correct it yet. Inside, his father sat at the head of the table, jaw set. Emily offered a small smile. Dinner started civil, small talk about the weather and football. Then his father set his fork down. "So, this video. You want to explain why you're throwing away everything we taught you?" Henry's throat closed. Alexander's knee pressed gently against his under the table, a silent anchor. "Dad, I'm gay. I've always been gay. Hiding it nearly killed me inside." His mother gasped softly. Emily looked between them, confused. His father's face hardened. And this friend? He part of this? The question hung heavy. Henry felt the old fear rising, the same one that had kept him silent in the desert. But Alexander's steady presence beside him gave him strength. "Yes," Henry said. "He is." The room exploded in voices. His father stood, chair scraping. "I won't have this in my house." Emily tried to calm everyone. Henry's mother cried quietly. In the chaos, Henry saw Alexander's face, calm but pained, and something shifted inside him. He wasn't going to let the past dictate his future anymore. "We're leaving," Henry said, standing. "But this isn't over." Outside in the cool night air, Alexander took his hand openly. "You did good in there." Henry leaned against the truck, breathing hard. "It feels like I just lost them." "Maybe not forever," Alexander said. "But you gained something bigger. Yourself." They drove home in silence, but it was a different kind, full of possibility. Back at the apartment, Henry pulled Alexander close, the kiss slow and full of everything they had held back. For the first time since coming out, Henry didn't feel alone in the storm. The next morning brought no peace. Henry's phone was flooded with messages from the veterans group. Mike had called an emergency meeting at the VFW hall for that afternoon. "We need to discuss how this affects the organization," the group text read. Henry stared at the screen, anger and hurt warring inside him. Alexander made breakfast, eggs and toast, simple and steady. "You don't have to go alone," he said. Henry shook his head. "This is my mess. I need to face it." But when he arrived at the hall, the room was packed with familiar faces, men he had shared foxholes and beers with. Mike stood at the front, looking uncomfortable. "Henry, we've all read the video. Some of the guys feel betrayed. We're a brotherhood built on trust." Whispers rippled through the crowd. One older vet, a guy named Carl who had been like a mentor, spoke up. "You lied to us for years. How do we know what else you hid?" Henry's hands clenched at his sides. "I hid because I was scared. The same way some of you hid your own struggles with PTSD or money problems. This doesn't change what we went through together." But the room wasn't listening. Accusations flew, some laced with slurs that cut deeper than any bullet. Mike tried to mediate, but Henry saw the betrayal in his eyes. Later, outside, Mike pulled him aside. "I knew about you and that medic back then. Kept my mouth shut. But now, the whole group's talking about stripping your membership. I can't stop it." The words landed like a punch. Henry drove home in a fog, the betrayal stinging worse than his family's reaction. Alexander was waiting, concern etched on his face. Henry told him everything, voice breaking. Alexander pulled him into a hug. "They're scared of what they don't understand. But you're not alone in this." That night, Henry's sister called. "Dad's talking about changing the will. Says he can't leave the family business to someone living a lie." The pressure mounted, every relationship cracking under the weight of his truth. Alexander listened, then shared his own story of coming out to his parents years earlier, the slow thaw that eventually came. "It takes time," he said, "but you have to keep showing up as yourself." The next day brought more fallout. A local news station picked up the video, framing it as a controversial veteran story. Comments poured in from strangers, some supportive, most vicious. Henry paced the apartment, doubt creeping in. "Maybe I should have kept quiet," he muttered. Alexander stopped him, hands on his shoulders. "No. You did the bravest thing possible. Now let me help carry it." They spent the evening planning, Alexander suggesting Henry record a follow-up video addressing the hate directly. As they worked side by side on the laptop, shoulders touching, Henry felt the first real spark of hope since the ordeal began. But deep down, the misunderstanding with Mike lingered. Henry wondered if their friendship was truly broken or if time could heal it. Alexander sensed the worry. "One battle at a time," he said. Henry nodded, but the psychological toll was mounting. Sleep came hard that night, dreams mixing desert sand with hometown streets, Alexander always just out of reach. When he woke, Alexander was already up, coffee ready, a quiet strength that reminded Henry why he had fallen in love all those years ago. The road ahead looked long and uncertain, but with Alexander beside him, Henry decided he would keep walking it, one painful step at a time. The turning point arrived on a rainy Thursday when Henry's father called, demanding a private meeting at the family business office. "Just you," he said. "No outsiders." Henry agreed, but Alexander insisted on waiting in the truck outside. "I'm not leaving you to face this alone." The office smelled of old leather and coffee, the walls lined with photos of Henry in uniform. His father sat behind the desk, looking older than his 60 years. "Son, I raised you to be a man of honor. This choice you're making dishonors everything." Henry stood tall. "It's not a choice, Dad. It's who I am. And Alexander isn't an outsider. He's the man I love." The word hung in the air like smoke. His father's face flushed. "That medic? You expect me to accept that?" The argument escalated, voices rising until Henry's mother appeared in the doorway, tears streaming. She had followed, unable to stay away. In the heated exchange, old secrets spilled. Henry learned his father had suspected something years ago but buried it, hoping the army would straighten him out. The revelation cut deep, but it also freed something inside Henry. "I'm not asking for permission," Henry said finally. "I'm asking for a chance to show you the man I really am." His mother reached for his hand. "I just want you happy, baby." His father remained silent, but the anger had cracked into confusion. Outside, Alexander waited, rain streaking the windshield. Henry climbed in, exhausted but lighter. "It's a start," he said. That evening, they met Emily for coffee. She hugged Alexander, a tentative acceptance. "If he makes you happy, that's what matters." The small victories accumulated, but the cost was real. Henry's membership in the veterans group was officially revoked the next day. The email stung, but Alexander was there, suggesting they start their own support group for LGBTQ veterans. The idea sparked something in Henry, a purpose beyond the pain. As they walked through the park later, leaves wet underfoot, Henry stopped and turned to Alexander. "I almost lost everything, but I gained you again. That's worth the fight." Alexander kissed him right there, under the street lamp, uncaring who saw. The moment felt cinematic, rain glistening, two men claiming their truth in the open. Back home, they talked late into the night about the future, California calling with new opportunities. Henry realized the sacrifice, the family tension, the lost friendships, had forced him to grow in ways he never imagined. He was no longer the man hiding in the shadows. He was stepping into the light, Alexander by his side. The climax hit at the annual Veterans Fundraiser, an event Henry had helped organize for years. He decided to attend anyway, Alexander at his side. The hall was packed, lights bright, flags hanging proudly. Whispers followed them as they entered. Mike approached first, looking conflicted. "You shouldn't be here, Henry." "I earned my place," Henry replied steadily. "Same as everyone." The tension built through speeches and awards. When Henry's name was called for a past honor, the room went silent. He walked to the stage, Alexander watching from the front row. "I served with pride," Henry said into the microphone, voice clear. "But I also served while hiding who I was. Today I stand here as a gay man, still proud, still honored. If that makes some of you uncomfortable, that's your burden, not mine." Gasps rippled. Carl stood, ready to protest, but Mike stepped forward unexpectedly. "He's right. We lost brothers who never got to live their truth. Maybe it's time we change." The room fractured into applause and boos. Outside afterward, emotions peaked. Henry and Alexander stood in the parking lot as rain started again. Tears mixed with rain on Henry's face. "I thought I'd break," he admitted. Alexander wiped them away. "You didn't. You stood taller." In that moment, under the dramatic lights of the hall spilling out, everything converged. The misunderstandings, the betrayals, the sacrifices all led here, to this public declaration that freed Henry's soul. Alexander pulled him close, their embrace fierce and unashamed. For the first time, Henry felt completely seen, not as the veteran or the son, but as himself. Weeks later, the dust began to settle. Henry's mother called weekly, her voice warmer each time. His father still struggled but sent a short text, "Proud of your service. Working on the rest." The new support group Alexander suggested was gaining traction, veterans reaching out with their own stories. Henry and Alexander packed boxes, planning the move to California where new jobs and a fresh start waited. On their last evening in Ohio, they walked the same park where it all began to shift. Golden leaves crunched underfoot, the air crisp. Henry stopped, turning to Alexander. I never thought coming out would lead to this. Loss and gain all at once. Alexander smiled, pulling him into a gentle kiss. That's life. We grow through the hard parts. As they watched the sunset paint the sky in vibrant hues, Henry felt truly at peace. The journey had tested every relationship, revealed every hidden truth, and forged a stronger version of himself. With Alexander's hand in his, the future felt bright and possible. But the real question remains, is coming out always worth the cost of everything you once held dear? True or false?